Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leah Smalley. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Services here at the Coordinating Board. This is actually a re-recording of the August webcast. If you originally joined, the file that we created got corrupted, so now I'm actually creating a brand new presentation. So if you joined live, this will not be the original webcast. This is a re-recorded version. And if you're joining for the first time, then I'll be providing all the same information. Hopefully I'll give you a few extra tidbits this time. But without further ado, I'll move on. So on today's agenda topics, we're going to be talking about requesting funds for grant payments and some of the other programs through the state. I'll also be going through the award history process that people can do either online through CBPass or through Move It. I'll be talking about several program updates that have come about through Educational Aid, Texas College Work Study, and WorkStudy Mentorship program. I'm also going to be talking about some proposed rule changes through the Texas Administrative Code. We are going to be releasing the Texas application for state financial aid for 2021, so we're going to be talking about the changes on this upcoming application, and then our upcoming events and deadlines. So let's get started. So requesting funds. On August 1st, we sent out a flyer to the institutions letting you know that there is a new portal available to request grant funding for the 3 state funds, Texas Grant, TEOG, and TEG. The steps for requesting funds are pretty much the same as they always have been, but this is through a newer, secure, and more efficient site. So you'll notice when you log in that it does look different. So I'm going to be doing a demo on this today on how to request your funding, but you may want to go back and look at your flyers to see if you received this notification, because it does have the 4-step process on there and just walks you through just pretty much how simple it is now to request your funding. So I'm going to do a live demo. So I'm going to pull this up on my screen. If you joined in prior months, I did a webcast last month that went through this more thoroughly. But on today's webcast, I'm really just going to be showing people how do you request your money. The new 1920 award year is about to begin, so we are asking that schools start submitting those so that once the September 1st deadline or the fiscal year begin date happens, we can go ahead and process those funds. So when you log into CBPass now, I should probably go back home. This is what the screen is going to now look like. Instead of how it was before, you're going to have a grant payments on here. When you click on grant payments, it's going to take you to this home screen, which has a summary on the front. It's going to have your original allocation. This revised allocation is if we were to provide additional funding or potentially reduce funding, which does not happen very often, but there are times when we'll get extra funding, and so that's what those differences will be. And then this total student count. This is the number of students that you've submitted to us that you're paying out grant funds for. And then this is where it shows the kind of running totals of where your requests are at, whether they're pending, whether they've been dispersed. Now, I will tell you, I do plan to do additional training on this portal. So for today's purposes, I'm not going to go into every single little thing on the screen, but just wanted to point out when you log in, it does default to this home screen, which is just intended to be a summary. So for the demonstration purposes, I'm going to go to the top menu here and click Request Funds. On the Request Funds screen, you're only going to see the appropriation year here that was designated on the home screen. So if you were to change this in future years, there will be a drop-down menu. You can designate which appropriation year. So when you request the funds, if it's not correct, that's where you go to change it. The program type is related to the institution you work for. So you're only going to have the grant program that's available to your school. You're not going to have any others there. And then your request amount, this is going to be each time you need funding, you log in to enter your request amount and then the student count. And one of the things that you'll notice about the student count is it no longer has a breakdown between initial year students and renewal year students. So on the old process, you had to distinguish between the types of students you are requesting money for, but in this new portal, we will not be asking that anymore. It's simply how many students are you asking for and the amount. So that is a big difference. Now, I know on the prior webcast and on several questions we've had, people have said, okay, so if we don't have to report that on here, do we still have to report it on the financial aid database report? You know, do we still need to do IYRY? And the answer is yes. We still are doing all the eligibility for initial year and renewal year. You'll still need to package them that way. You'll still report them that way, but you will not be reconciling those individual populations. So when you complete your FADS report starting for 1920, so next year, you won't have to reconcile those on FAD. So that will be a big help, but just know that since we're still wrapping up cycle 2 and we still have cycle 3 for 18-19, you do still have to do that. So sorry for the bad news. But yes, that is going away for 1920 and forward. So I'm going to pretend here. I'm going to enter some amounts. So let's do $20,000. And I'm going to do 100 students. I know that's not quite accurate, but I just want to show you what it looks like. When you hit submit request, it's going to pop up with a blue confirmation at the top saying it's been successful. So if you go back to your home screen, you will be able to see this previously said 375 students and now it says 475. And then the amounts here also updated with the pending amounts and then how much allocation I have remaining. So you will see those change as you log in and as money flows through the system. If you want additional training, please reach out. Because we haven't done a lot in 1920 yet, we're really just focusing on getting schools to request funds. As we roll out returns on funding and everything else, I'll be doing additional training on the transaction details and other things, but I just wanted to at least show people how easy it is right now to request your funding. And again, the sooner the better so that we can get those through and start processing them as soon as the fiscal year starts. Okay, so moving on, I will touch on award history for those of y'all wondering about that, so I will circle back. But going back to the presentation, we talked about grant funds, so the 3 grant programs, but what about things like WorkStudy? So Texas College WorkStudy is going to be issued out the same way it has been, which is one lump sum. So after the fiscal year begins, if you chose to participate in Texas College WorkStudy, we'll be issuing those funds out. So you'll receive the entire lump sum of funds into your account, and then you'll pay those out as students earn those through payroll. Educational aid and bilingual education scholarship. This process is not changing for 1920. So if you participate in these programs, you will go online to our Student Financial Aid Programs website and you'll submit one of these 2 forms. This is the educational aid form. This is the bilingual form. You fill it out and you submit it through an email account. And once we receive those, we will approve the funds and route those over to you through the comptroller. One of the things to be mindful of if you're in bilingual education scholarship, there's only 7 schools that participate in that program, but I wanted to bring to your attention that other associated costs did go away for 1920. That was something that schools could report, and that has been removed out of the legislation, so you can no longer use the funds for those costs. So you won't see that on the form anymore, and I wanted to make sure people are aware of that so that you can shift your program appropriately. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. I think that's it on requesting funds. Obviously, loan funds are the same. You'll either submit a common line file to us through Move It, and many of the schools still use HelmNet to log in and manually certify your loans. That process has not changed for 1920. Those should be available to you to go ahead and start certifying your loans. So moving on, one last thing. So I will be doing additional training as the months continue on the new grant payments program, but that's really it for today. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to request those funds. So any questions you have, submit a contact us or give us a call on our institutional line. So award history. After we rolled out the grant payments, we started getting a lot of phone calls saying that the award history, people couldn't find it, they didn't know where it was, and yes, it did move when we launched the new system. So I'm going to go back to that screen just to show you. When you're on this screen, you'll notice that instead of having the old award history, it's actually built into this new screen on the grant payments. And that's because it's all under the same application that our IT team built here. So you're going to see it moved. Now, when you actually click on it, let me stop for a moment. This is a test site. You can see hello test. So this is not in production yet. This is going to be rolled out very, very shortly. So if you're wondering, wait a minute, that doesn't look like my screen. I'm in a test account, and this is something that's being approved as we speak. So hopefully you'll see this in the next few days, maybe a week. I don't have the exact date, so I can't confirm. But when you do and you go in, you'll be able to click on any of the 3 links that are here, or there's a little drop down menu. And when you click on it, it will relaunch back to, let me do this. They're still working on it, but it will route you to the screen that you're familiar with that has the prior screen. So this is an example here. So when you click on Texas Grant, it'll pop up and you can do it the old way, which is option A. You log in, you enter the socials, or you can do the name search with the birthday. As of today, the only one that's available is Texas Grant. So if you're a TEOG or TEG school, that's why we're going to be going through option B today, or any school can go through option B. But I just wanted to make people aware that we are testing it. We're trying to get this up and running for all 3 grant programs. So when you log into the new grant payment system, you will be able to access that. But as of right now, it's in test. We're trying to get all the bugs worked out and get it all set up appropriately. So if you click on it and you only have access to Texas Grant, that is why, and we are working to resolve that. So if you want to still look up award history, there is another option that I don't know that a lot of schools use, and that is by creating a file through a text file and submitting it through Move It. So I thought today, I did this in a prior demo, but I thought today what I do is show people how to actually create the file so you can see what the steps are, because it's a little intimidating to open the instruction sheet and just hop right in it. But really when you do it, it's pretty quick, especially if you have a report in your system that can pull your students easily. So first thing is, where do you find the instructions to do the award history file? If you log into the SFAP site, so let me go to the main page. So this is the Student Financial Aid Programs Information webpage. And for each, under Program Resources, we have all the programs. And under Grant Programs, you have the 3 programs here. Each one of them has an award history file instruction, and it's all the same document. So you can open any of those. This is the instructions, and if you go through section by section, it tells you exactly how to create the file, how to submit it, where to send it. But again, I know myself, I'm very visual. I like to watch a video, so that's why I'm kind of incorporating it into this webcast so that you can just watch me create the file, and then hopefully it'll help you to do that in the future. So first things first, I would read the instruction manual, but really, it's as simple as pulling a file together in Excel. So first thing, the award history file layout. When you create something in Excel, when you're creating a file, you have to have a header record. So when you open Excel, the first step, let's change this to a text format. This is a text file. And the reason that's important is when you start adding numbers into the cells, it drops the leading zeros, and that can actually error out your file. So we want to fix that first. If I go within the instructions, I'm going to move this back over. It says that the header record has to have, in the first one, it has to have the grant name The second, it has to have the school ID, and the third, it has to have the word award history. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and do Texas grant. So it says to do TXGR, and then just making sure I got it right. And then in the next cell, it says to put your FAS code or your OPID. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I have to have award history. You have to make sure every single thing is right. It will not work if you don't do it. Okay. So those are the 3 requirements for the header record. Going back to the instructions. The next step is to make sure that you enter the student information below it. So I'm going to scroll down in the instructions, and this right here is called the detailed records. This is what it's asking you to enter data-wise so that you can upload it to our database for us to find those students. So the first thing that you enter is the social security number, or if it's a student ID. So for this purpose, I'm just going to make these up. Okay, and then the second column, it says, is it a social or is it a school ID? You'll notice it says, is it a 1 or a 2? This one is a social, so I'm going to put a 1. I go to the next cell. It's asking me their date of birth. So this one, I'm going to do 1/25/1985. Again, if you don't convert this to text, that birthday is going to drop that 0 and the file will not go through. So that's why, again, it's very important that you convert that and you check to make sure that this is text. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of issues. Another example is a social security number that might start with a 0, or the FAS code starts with a 0. You're going to run into issues. The fourth column is the student's last name and then the first name. Sorry, I keep moving these back. I just want you to be able to see the instructions. You can see those. And so I'm going to put Smith, and Test as the first name. So now we have all of this in here. Now, obviously you can type all this, but what I would recommend is if you have a report in your system, is run it and then whittle it down to these items and then dump it in here, or save it, or add the header record. You can kind of do it different ways. But again, just make sure that it's text and that it has all the characters that are required. Otherwise, it will not go through. So once you have everybody in here, so you could have 1 student, you could have 100, you could have 1,000. You want to save the file, do save as, and then figure out where you want to save it. You may have a place that you've done, and I'm going to have to save it based on how the instructions are listed. So on the front page of the instructions, it says the file format naming convention is the 6-digit FAS code, the name of the grant program, and then award history with a space. So I'm going to do that now. So 999999, and then Texas grant award history. Okay. And then you'll notice this is defaulted to Excel workbook. I have to change it to text tab to limited. Okay, so let me go back to my instructions. Just make sure before I save I have this all right. 6-digit FAS code. Okay, so make sure that you don't put extra zeros. I've got 6 digits. I've got my grant and award history, and I'm going to hit save. So now that's saved. Once you've created the file upload process is to log in to move it and upload it into your home folder. So I'm already logged in to move it, and then from here I'm going to go find that school. So give me just a moment. Oh, I gotta sign in again. Okay, so here's my school. This is the screen that will look more familiar to everyone on this webcast. So once you're here, you hit launch and then you add your file, which here's the file I just created, 822. And then once it's added, you hit upload, okay, and close. So now here it is in the home screen. This will only stay there for a few minutes or maybe an hour. Once our program comes through and picks up the file, it will disappear. You should receive a receipt confirmation letting you know that we got your file. And then once the results are ready, you should also receive a note. That's also in the instructions here. So you'll get either an error saying your file couldn't be processed if there's an issue, or the results file. So I apologize. Let's see, a file receipt confirmation. Yes. So you'll receive a file receipt confirmation once we get it. You'll get a notification if it errors out, or you'll get a notification if it processes. So if you upload it and you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, it's possible that the file didn't process it all. You need to give us a call. So definitely wait a few hours, and if you don't get something, let us know. We've been having some delays with our file processing because of FAS, so you have to be patient on getting your response. But once it's done, I've already uploaded this in here, you're going to go to your grant output folder. So once you get the notification that it's ready, you'll go to grant outputs, find the appropriate grant program, and then once you're in here, you'll see something that looks like this. It says student award history, and then you're going to download the file, and when you open it, the results page is going to look like this. It's a little bit hard to read, so my recommendation is to take this file, dump it back into Excel, and you can delimit the information back into a readable format. On my prior webcast that I did not go through, I wasn't able to do this step, but I thought I'd just show people since I have some extra time today. If you copy this into Excel, so all I did was copy this. You paste it in here. It still kind of looks messy. What you do is you go to Data, the Data tab at the top, hit Text to Columns, and then do delimited, hit the next, and then do after the comma, next, finish. And now everything's lined up. If you want to, you have to do it this way, sorry. Let me try this again. Oh, so this, you have to do it on each of these. Ah! Okay, there we go. Sorry. So now everything is under the correct one. When you go back to the instruction sheet towards the bottom, this tells you for each of the grant programs what the result file is displaying, so that you can see kind of what data we had in our database and what you're going to be reading. So this is very helpful when deciphering what's in the file. Okay, so let me pull that back up again. You can see each of the things here. The initial year they received their award, the last year they were reported, the last school that reported them, whether they are meeting SAP, their attempted hours, so all of that's in there. Okay. All right, so that is how you create a file manually. And again, this is really intended either as a workaround if the system's not working, or if you have a ton of students you want to run, like your whole student population, if you want to run that just to check their eligibility. If you have transfer students, it can get a little tricky because if they come from another school and they don't have a social security number, your student ID numbers are not going to match. So those are still going to be difficult. You're going to have to reach out to the prior institution just to confirm if they had eligibility. Now, once the portal's working again, you can use that for those students that don't have socials, but this particular file process, it's a little bit more tricky with transfer. So this is really good for all the students that have social security numbers, or your internal population of students that do not have social security numbers. You can use it. If you have issues with award history for either the portal or the file process, please submit a contact us to us through our website so that we can reach out to you and either look into your situation if something's going on with processing, or if you need help with training, and we can help you there. If you go to our website, you can either go to the main page and hit contact us here, Or on any of the agency's website through inquiries, it's the same link. And once you click on that, you'll submit that over to us. Send us your inquiry. So let's circle back to the webcast. Okay. So we went through, this is how the results page is displayed. So I'm going to move on from there. Again, please reach out if you have questions, but just for time purposes, I'm going to move on to our program updates. So last month's webcast in July, I went through educational aid exemption, and one of the pieces that we talked about was the critical shortage areas. At that time, we didn't have the critical shortage areas released yet from the Department of Education or Texas Education Agency. As of this broadcast, we received those, and they are available on the screen. We are also updating our program guidelines for educational aid, and we also sent them out in a welcome letter earlier this week on the 19th, so you'll want to go look there. But basically the way that it works is Texas Education Agency submits all the data to the Department of Education each year, and then they publish those shortage areas, and they just made those available. So those are on your screen. We have all the ones that are there. If your student is in a teacher certification program and it's in one of these areas, then that's one of the eligibility requirements for the program. Please keep in mind that there are others. All the information on educational aid is available through College for All Texans as well as our website. So please make sure that if you have questions, you contact us. There's a lot of misunderstanding on that program because it's changed a lot throughout the years and it has very limited funding. So I do encourage people definitely go back to the July webcast because I went through this program in more detail, but this is just an update on the shortage areas. Texas College Work-Study off-campus requirement. Again, in a prior webcast, I mentioned that House Bill 3808 created the Texas Works program, and this program is going to be a centralized paid internship program that's going to be administered through the coordinating board, and it uses work-studies funding to do this program. But part of that bill repealed the off-campus requirement. So the off-campus requirement currently states that institutions have to ensure that at least 20%, but no more than 50% of the employment positions through the program are provided by off-campus employers. This was a very difficult thing for institutions to meet through the past about 3 or 4 years when it went into effect. And so due to this Texas Works program, they were able to repeal that piece of it. But the questions we've been receiving is, when does that go into effect? And unfortunately, it will go into effect summer 2020. So for 1920 award year, institutions that are participating in the program do still have to meet that off-campus requirement just for this last year. I did state on the prior webcast live presentation that if you want information or you want the legislation behind the repeal, you can send that to me. I'll email it out to you. I'll give my contact information at the end of this presentation, so feel free, or you can send it through Contact Us. The last update is on WorkStudy Mentorship Program. This year, Financial Aid Services worked with our College Readiness and Success area, which is another area of the agency, and they're the ones that issue out the funding for this program to institutions that participate. And, we've come to find that each school set up differently. Sometimes it's a whole dedicated area. Sometimes it's through financial aid. It really just depends on the institution. So this year we collaborated to create program guidelines. And if you're familiar with our other programs, you're going to notice that these program guidelines mirror those. They have everything's built in with hyperlinks and provide some additional examples and guidance. So I encourage everyone to go out and read that, because if you don't participate in the mentorship program and it seems like something your school would benefit from, then maybe in future years you may opt into trying to participate. But it does have a lot of rules. It has a lot of criteria. So this document was created to try and help guide institutions on how to administer that program. So if you are one of the programs that participates, we wanted to make sure to draw attention to how you're calculating your awards. So funds awarded to unemployed students are considered financial aid for the academic year, and therefore they cannot exceed a student's need. So depending on, again, how your office is set up, if you have another area that's doing this program exclusively and they don't go through financial aid, you need to make sure that you're included so that y'all can calculate the student's financial need to ensure that their award is not exceeding that. So in this example below, we included this to show the cost of attendance minus the student's EFC. In the first example, the student has a $7,000 financial need, but in the second example, the student's EFC is very high and they don't have financial need. So we want to make sure that schools know that they can't package mentorship awards for this scenario. So it is something to be aware of. If you have questions, you can reach out to Financial Aid Services, or if you currently participate, you can reach out to your contact at the agency with those questions, which is in College Readiness and Success. The next topic is on proposed rule changes. So every time the Texas Administrative Code is updated, they release a document that includes a lot of information in it, and sometimes it's related to institutions and sometimes it's not. But on July 26th, there was an edition release that had a lot of rule changes that we want institutions to be aware of, because this is your opportunity to know what's coming down the pipeline and to provide comments and questions to the coordinating board before they're actually changed. And when I had given this webcast originally, it was over a week ago. So the deadline for this is August 25th, which is coming up very soon, but it has been out on the register for almost 30 days. And on this demo, what I'm going to do is just walk people through where the document's located, how to look at prior editions, and of course, how to comment if you choose to. But when you click on this link here, feel free, it'll be in the PowerPoint online. It launches the Texas Register's page, and it shows here not only the current issue, which you can see now is August 16th, but you can look at previous issues as well. And when you click on PDF, it'll have a list of all the editions that have been released in PDF format. So for today's purposes, we're looking at July 26th. And then all sections. So when you scroll through the document, there's a table of contents, and this will break down all the different agencies that have contributed to this edition. And you can see here the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, all of the sections that we submitted through. So you can see there's quite a few proposed changes, and you'll definitely want to go through and read them. I'm not going to go through all of them today just because there's so many different details in them, but one of the biggest things that's going to be happening is that we're trying to align all the different definitions that were in the programs of Chapter 22. You can see Chapter 22 here. But let me just toggle over to Chapter 22 so you can see. But in the general provisions, there's a section that has definitions. And within this, what we're trying to do is list all the different definitions that apply to all programs. Because right now, each individual program has their own definitions, and they're not all consistent. And it was confusing for schools. So that is something in this edition that you'll want to read, because that's going to be moving up into the general provisions. There's also some changes being proposed for the tuition equalization grant, so TEG. So you'll want to go through and read those changes associated with this program to make sure that if there's an impact or if there's something that you have questions on, that you voice those concerns to the coordinating board. So going back to, how do you do that? It's in the document, so when you launch this document, it tells you how to, but you can also use my presentation. You can submit those to Charles Poles. Here's his email address, and you'll want to reference, the rule or the question that you have, and you'll need to get that into him fairly quickly. Again, this has been out on the Texas Register for almost a month now. It was sent out through the TASFA listserv and of course mentioned on my webcast. So there's different places where this information goes out to institutions. And of course you can reach out to me if you have questions on anything on this webcast. Moving on, 2021 TASFA. So this past year, the Financial Aid Advisory Committee that meets quarterly charged a new subcommittee to review this application. We have published this for many years, originally through TG and Trellis, and then the coordinating board took that on about 3 years ago to redevelop that. And really it's an application that aligns with FAFSA, but there's some very subtle changes, and it's intended for students who cannot complete a FAFSA to see if they still may qualify for other types of financial aid, primarily state financial aid. But some institutions use this for institutional funding, scholarship programs, a variety of different things. As of right now, it's a optional resource document. Recent legislation has made this a application that's going to be put online through the coordinating board, so more to come on that. But for this year's upcoming 2021 TASFA, the goal for this committee was, let's review the document and just propose some changes. If there's things that are really, really useful that need to be added, are there things that need to be removed? What is the overall feeling on this document so that we can make things more efficient? So once the committee met and we also polled institutions through a survey, we then went through Financial Aid Advisory Committee and got approval for these changes. And these are the changes that are going to be made coming out in the next month or two. So the first thing was question 19. Previously it had credit hour ranges in there, and what we were finding is students were getting confused on what to put, either because they'd been in school for a long time but they didn't know the credit hours that they had earned. They didn't really know how to answer this, and since this doesn't really drive a lot on the credit ranges for state aid, we felt that it was just more confusing than helpful. So these were just removed and to align better with FAFSA. Untaxed income, we had feedback that, it doesn't quite align with how FAFSA words it, and many people were getting confused, mainly administrators more than students, because they weren't really getting the information that they needed. They wanted that separation between the untaxed income information between 68 and 71. So we added 71 to align with FAFSA, and then we added some extra verbiage to make 68 clear that it's intended for clergy and military members. So you'll see those changes this year. The next piece was adding an NA option to the federal assistance programs. It did indicate that last year that, just leave it blank if they didn't apply, but institutions were saying they weren't really sure if students were inadvertently forgetting that one or if they were leaving it blank because they didn't have it. So adding an NA would be helpful so that at least for each one of these things they're marking some designation, yes or no. The other thing was just kind of communicating to students that this, unlike FAFSA, does not go to all the schools you want it to. You have to manually print these out and submit them. So it's just letting them know, hey, if you're going to be applying to multiple schools, please make sure to make copies and sign each to send to your school. So it's just kind of a heads up for the student. And then lastly, our favorite topic, selective service statement. Because this requirement came out, last year, schools were saying that it was just one additional piece that TASFA students had to do. So it would be really helpful to weave it into the document and put it somewhere so that it's just part of the actual application. So we are getting the final approvals for this to add this in, and we are expanding the statement based on feedback so that each of the different scenarios, there's a better box for students to check. And it's just clearer than the other form was. So again, we've been going through this and getting feedback and input from a lot of different areas. So I'm really hopeful that the institutions find this to be a better selective service statement and incorporate it into the TASFA so that it's easier to process these. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously, I can't ask if anyone has questions because this is a re-recorded demo or webcast, so I'll just keep moving. But important dates. Important dates, August 1st, I mentioned you need to start requesting money. We opened the grant payment system, so please submit those through. And then starting on September 1st, once we return from the Labor Day holiday, the coordinating board will start processing those funds and sending those to the comptroller. Speaking of which, you'll notice directly across from that, September 2nd, the comptroller's office is closed, as well as the coordinating board and many of the institutions. So September 3rd is the day that we reopen, and that's when things will start moving through the process again. August 19th is FAD's validation deadline. As of this recording, there's still quite a number of schools that have not validated. They're still going through error and reconciliation processes. But if you have questions on how to resolve those or you need help, please reach out. We do still have quite a few schools that are pending, and we want to make sure to get those done soon. August 29th. There is a Texas College Work-Study data request deadline coming up. There is a list of schools that went out in a notification requesting data. Here's the list of schools. Again, this is a little outdated at this point, so if you've submitted this, you can disregard if you're listening to this recording. But if you have not and you're not aware of this data request, it was sent out and it's posted to our website, and I'm going to pull that up. It was sent on August 12th. Here's the information on what we're asking for. It has the list of schools in it, and it also has the instructions on what you need to do and how you need to notify us that you've done it. Again, that deadline is the 29th, which is coming up, so please make sure that if you're one of these schools that you read this memo and you go out and complete the steps necessary. If you're brand new, you can find the memo, the one that I just mentioned, under our main page, and then you hit Stay Connected. And then our recent memos, it's right here, the Texas College Data Request Memo. Going back to the last deadline, or important date, I should say, September 10th is our next monthly FAS webcast. It's the start of the fiscal year, so hopefully we'll have some exciting topics. I really encourage people to log in and join to see what we're going to be talking about. We'll send out the topics in advance like we always do, and then if you have questions, just reach out. And as always, our institutional phone line is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The number is 844-792-2640. And the contact information, here's my email address. And I really am asking people to send in webcast surveys. This helps me know how I'm doing, what topics you're interested in, and just gives us an overall gauge of how these are serving your institution. So I really, really appreciate the people that have sent those in. And again, it helps me develop topics for upcoming webcasts. And so far, I've gotten lots of great ideas. We've had lots of success with these webcasts. So I appreciate people who have joined. But I think that's it. Again, this is a re-recorded version. If you were on the original and there was something I mentioned that you have a question on, please reach out. The best way to contact us is through our Contact Us link. While you can email me directly, sometimes those emails can get delayed if I'm out of the office or anything. So sometimes it's better to use our Contact Us link so that we can get back to you faster. Outside of that, I hope everyone has a fantastic week. I know that school's just starting, so good luck with all your students, and we will talk to you next month. So thank you so much. Have a great day.